All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller. And as you know, if you've joined in before, I am here to help with your career, to help you develop in your career. Now, my specialty is in social and emotional intelligence. So I will usually welcome, good to have you, Bunmi. Welcome everybody as we're getting started here. Bunmi, as we're getting started here, is there anything in particular that you want support with? You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I saw the notification about how you interact with your employers when you're having an interview. How to
Okay,
get
great.
them to sort of like gain that rapport, and I'm
Uh-huh.
looking to get tips because I'm currently in that stage. So yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Well, I will be sharing some more about that. And the way that you can join in is I love it. If you have a question, you're welcome to come on camera or come off mute and ask your question. Feel free to interrupt me at any point because I'm going to be doing educational stuff throughout this live stream. And if something pops into your mind, you are more than welcome to interrupt me. And if you want to remain anonymous, if you want your questions to if you don't want it attached to you, feel free to type your questions to me privately in the chat. You can always choose to send it just to me. And for those of you viewing on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube, you are welcome to type your questions into the comment section, and Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do my best to get to those questions today. So, um, again, your questions, they don't have to do with the topic. If you have another question in mind that doesn't have to do with interviewing, feel free to ask that question. Anything career related is on the table today. So I'll share a little bit more about myself and about the approach to career that I use, and then we'll get into interviewing. So I'm George Miller. I've got my master's in transformational leadership and coaching. I've been coaching for 10 years. And what I have found is that looking at a career, looking at my career through the lens of how can what I'm doing help me become the person that I want to be? How is this job or this profession or whatever, how is it helping me reach my potential? That question ends up serving me a great deal as I'm developing in my career. And so I invite everybody who's listening in to think about yourself that way. Think about who you want to become and what your career path might have to do with that. So, for example, if you are in IT, and let's say that you've been there for a while and you're finding that there's not you're not developing any further beyond that, beyond your current position. And perhaps people are saying things to you like that you're working with, like, oh, we need you to become a more effective leader, or we want you to be better at managing. And you might be saying to yourself, I just really want to do my job. There's other things that I'm interested in. I'm not necessarily interested in managing people. So we would want to look at that and see if you learning to manage people might not be on purpose for you in your career. That might actually be something that is important for you to do if you're looking at your career as who can I become? Or it may not be. You may have that and say, you know what? It's actually I really need to go further into deepening my expertise in this area, and managing a team would distract from that. And so that kind of thing, and getting a sense of who you are and how you want to develop, that kind of thing is how we want to be looking at you in your career. So I encourage you to be thinking about yourself in the long-term game of your career and your development. most of us will have several jobs in our careers now. You know, you think about it, like our parents or grandparents especially might have only ever had one job, and that was totally normal. Things have changed a great deal, and most of us companies live and die quickly. And so as individuals, our ability to shift, our ability to learn new things, our ability to say to ourselves, okay, great, I have a lot of expertise and there's more that I can do. There's more that I can accomplish in my career. There's more skills I can develop as I'm in my career. Having a growth mindset is an incredibly important thing, not just for success, not just for actually being successful in your career, but also for one's happiness. So that's a big context that I'm setting as we're getting started today. I will narrow this down into interviewing in just a moment here. But I want to say again to everybody who's joining in that all questions are welcome. You don't have to ask a question just based on the interview process. If you've got a question about managing, if you've got a question about communicating, managing up to your boss or leadership or partners or whoever, if you've got a question about your resume, if you've got a question about just how to work through some of the doldrums or times of getting bored or whatever at work, anything is on the table here, career related. My expertise, as I've said, is in social and emotional intelligence, and I will probably tie whatever question you have back to social and emotional intelligence. And with that, I'm going to dive into today's topic of interviewing. So, interviewing, I mean, this is social and emotional intelligence is so important in interviewing. Depending on where you're at in your career, sometimes just getting through the first round interview is going to mean that they're just checking off the boxes, making sure that you have experience in or that you have experience or training in what they're looking for. And so just having quick bottom line answers to those questions is going to be the best thing for you to do. And that's going to carry over into the next interviews. The biggest mistake that people make in interviewing is they talk too much. I've coached some people who just who maybe don't talk enough, but that's pretty rare. What usually happens is that somebody goes into an interview and they think that they need to convince the person who's interviewing them that they're right for the job. It's much better to go into an interview and say to myself, do I even want this job? What are the problems that I could anticipate in working here? What questions could I be asking? So it's a big change from trying to sell yourself to buying, to determining if you're going to be buying the job. And that actually demonstrates more personal responsibility and effectiveness to the person who's interviewing you. So think about it. If you're talking with somebody who's trying to convince you that they are the perfect person for the job and they can list off all kinds of experience they have, and they're trying to tell you about the past thing that they did that they think applies to this position, just notice what you're feeling as I start describing that. There's probably a combination of some anxiety and some irritation. That happens a lot in interviews. And the person interviewing you might not even be conscious that they're kind of annoyed with you. They might not, they might not realize, oh, here's somebody trying to convince themselves that they're a good fit for this job. They might not even be aware that that's happening. And they might just start looking for reasons not to hire you. You might rub them the wrong way. So the way to work with this or work around this is to get good at asking questions. Get good at asking questions, meaningful questions about the role that you're applying for. So you're going to do your research extensively before you get into that interview. You want to start picturing what it's like to work there. You want to imagine yourself there. Okay, what are the interactions? What's my daily job going to look like? And that's going to allow you to start having real questions, real things that you want answered. And your curiosity is the thing that will really open up the relationship. Your curiosity is the thing that is going to help you connect more with the person who's interviewing you. So now, of course, they're going to be asking you questions. So you do want to have bottom line responses to what they're saying. You don't want to talk on and on and on about how you know what the job is. You're going to share your experience quickly with them. So, yep. Okay, let's say they ask, "Oh, so it looks like you have this experience at your last role." And you say, "Yep, I did this, this, and this there." And then you might ask the question, and I'm imagining I'd be doing a similar thing here. It might be a little different because of this and this. And then you look to them to see, yep, are they agreeing? Yep, okay, great. And then you might add on, I had a question about, since I don't have this exact experience, is that something that, what's the training process for that here? And so you're looking for honest questions that you have about that role. So get those prepared ahead of time, because when you're in an interview, you might not think of this stuff. You might be because our anxiety tends to go up when we're in an interview. I know mine does. And I assume most of you are kind of like me. So it's like I'm in one way, I do want this job. I need to make money. So I want to be able to prove myself. So all this stuff about my value, etc., and it comes to the surface. And so it's going to be likely that if I'm not prepared, there's all kinds of things I would miss. So preparation is super important. Making sure you've got good questions and making sure that you know how to talk about yourself, making sure that you're ready to give bottom line answers to their questions. Is if somebody's interviewing you and you could give the perfect response to one of their questions, and then if they don't say something right away, you might just keep talking and talking and talking, and now starting to cause them to think that, oh, maybe they don't know, or this is kind of whatever. You may talk yourself out of rapport with them. So having good questions and having good bottom line responses going into the interview is strategy number one. So with that, I want to open this up to everybody and say, if you've got any questions about this, anything specific, please type it into the chat. Again, you're welcome to come off mute if you want to, or if you want to remain anonymous, type it into the chat. And I am actually getting some things here. So I had an interview that pretty quickly I determined it was not going to be a good fit. Is there an okay way to cut an interview short? I want to be mindful everybody's time, including my own. Oh, that's such a good question. So not sure if you were the one interviewing or if you were being interviewed. I'll share a little bit about it both ways. So, so in being interviewed, if first thing that you can think is, what would you want the person interviewing, if you were the person interviewing somebody and they started to realize that it wasn't a great fit, what would you want them to do? Would you want them to sit there and keep going through the process? Or would you want them to say something? Okay. Yep. So you'd want them to speak up. And so I'm curious, is that what you did? Did you, when you were being interviewed and you recognized that it wasn't a good fit, was your response, hey, you know what? I don't think this is a great fit. Okay. So how many of us, if we're in that, and this is part of the process here, is I want everybody listening in to be thinking about yourself and thinking about how you relate to this. So the scenario here is that somebody is being interviewed. So imagine yourself that you are in an interview and you start to realize, oh man, I don't think this position that I'm interviewing for is a really good fit. Now, how do you go about saying that in a way that's in rapport? But first, how many of you would just suffer through it? Honestly, I would probably suffer through it. Maybe not anymore, but I can certainly remember the times where I would suffer through it. And so just be with that for a moment, thinking about that uncomfortable interaction where you're like, oh, this isn't a great fit. And what it will take for you to step into having some courage, and maybe it's just knowing that it's okay. What would be to say something like, you know what? I I apologize. Um, I was interested in this position because of this, and this, and I didn't do enough research. If you want to be like really deferential, not, maybe that has some negative connotations, but if you want to be, if you're scared about hurting the person's feelings or doing something off, it's usually a good idea to apologize and take ownership for things up front, even if it's not 100% true. But just this might be a good move here. You say, you know what, I apologize. I don't think this. I probably didn't do enough research on this, and I really appreciate your time. But I don't. In to respect your time and my time, I just want to be upfront with you, and I'm starting to think this isn't a great fit for me. Boom, and then see what happens, because they might say, "Oh, what do you mean?" You would say, well, I thought it was more like this. And when I was looking at this company, like this is where my thinking was on it. And as we're getting into this interview, it sounds like the role is more like this. And then they might say, oh, no, actually, that's not how it is. Sorry, I wasn't communicating that correctly. Or they might say, oh, yeah, you know what? I think that's true. I think that is how this role is. Thank you so much for letting me know here, because it doesn't sound like this is a good fit. You know, thanks for telling me now instead of us going through the whole process here. And then what has happened for a lot of my clients at this point, when they do this in an interview, is that then they start having a real conversation with the person. And one client, they said 5 minutes into the interview, they're like, I apologize. I thought this was kind of something else. Don't want to waste your time. So I just wanted to tell you that. And then the person interviewing them said, thank you so much. So what was it about the job description that had you thinking it was what you were looking for? And right there, ended up using my client's time through the rest of, they probably didn't go the full half hour, but ask my client some questions about the job posting and Soon enough, my client was helping them tailor the job description so that they would get uh, more appropriate people applying for it. And they were very grateful. And they said, thank you so much for this. Please keep me in mind. I'm thinking about you and what you're looking for. And follow up with me in a couple weeks because there might be a few people I should introduce you to that might actually be more of what you're looking for. So right there, by telling the truth and, not wasting time, they actually made meaningful time in the rest of the interaction and deepened the relationship and opened up a network. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that you can get into when interviewing, when you are the person who's saying to yourself, I am the buyer in this process. I don't know that I want this job. And even if you really think you want the job and you're like, oh, like, God, I so need this, learning to step back and say, maybe I don't really need this, or let me really make sure if I really want this job, I'm going to ask some very good questions to determine if this is really a good fit for me. So that's a great question. Totally, totally, totally. So again, if you're being interviewed and you don't think that it's a good fit for you, being able to speak up, choosing to face that fear of, the kind of moment of awkwardness of, oops, sorry. You can lead with, I apologize. I thought the position was more this, and I'm starting to hear it's more like this. That way you're taking your part of the shared blame, perhaps, that you didn't do as much research or that it wasn't quite clear or whatever. And that's going to make it easier for them to say, oh, okay, well, this person's taking responsibility for for potential miscommunication. Well, well, maybe I can ask them some questions about like why it is that they selected this interview and how they got to this point. And because, maybe I can do something in this process that is gonna make it so that this doesn't happen again. Okay. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if that's helping. And yes, it's going to be an okay thing. And sometimes, if they're brief or if their feelings are kind of hurt in it and they're like, what? You don't want this job? What do you mean? Oh, they might, shut it off and say, well, fine. It's not, that's probably not going to happen. They'll probably thank you. But if that were to happen, or if it seems like they're cutting you off and like they're a little mad at you, I wouldn't worry about it too much. They're going to be on to their next thing. And, that's their responsibility. So, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Eric, thank you for that. Treat it like a networking opportunity. So if an interview starts to go in a direction where you're like, uh-oh, this isn't what I want, treating it like a networking opportunity. I love that. That's great. Just look at it like that. Well, this doesn't look like we're going to be a good fit. So what now? Do we want to cut this short, or do we want to talk a little bit more about what you're looking for? Let me think about who I might know that might be a good fit here, or maybe I can help you with the job description or whatever. I love that. Thanks, Eric. So I'm going to boil this down a little bit and then turn down via email if you make it to the next round or if you get rejected in problem. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's cool. So if you make it through an interview and there's another interview and you start to find out that it's not really what you want, you can send in an email, hey, I've got some other offers, or this isn't exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much for your time. I'm keeping you in mind and keeping what you're looking for in mind. Something like that is good. So at the heart of this is relationship. At the heart of any interaction is a relationship with the person you're talking to. And this is why emotional intelligence, this is how I got into career coaching, was I was doing coaching and emotional intelligence programs, and then some of my clients started referring their friends to me to help in their careers. I got a friend who is having issues with their boss, and I think that working with you around their emotional intelligence would actually help them manage that relationship with their boss better. So at the heart of so much of our career is the relationships, and being able to communicate effectively, whether you're in IT, an engineer, or whatever, is going to be so important, and will only get more important as you develop in your career. So some of these basic skills in identifying what I'm feeling in any given moment. So if I'm in an interview, say, and I'm starting to realize that it's not the right fit for me, and being able to identify, I feel a little afraid of saying something. Then being able to say, okay, got it. And that makes sense. I can understand why I might feel some anxiety about speaking up about it. But let me test that out. What's this anxiety for me personally? Well, I have a belief um, that I need to make other people happy. Okay, well, maybe that's not quite true here. And this anxiety that this person might be upset with me, maybe that's not really how it would happen. But if I'm afraid of that, I can use that fear, that anxiety in this moment to moment interaction with somebody, and I could just name it. You know, I'm afraid that I didn't fully understand this position when I applied, and then just owning it and naming the fear in that moment gives you a lot of power. It soothes your central nervous system. There's all kinds of cool neuroscience behind this. And naming the fear, whether out loud or just inside, saying, oh, I notice I'm feeling anxiety. Just doing that soothes our central nervous system, allows us to have better executive functioning. And then if I name that in an interaction, that's now inviting the person I'm interacting with to allow themselves to be more upfront and owning their feelings, what they're noticing. So it actually, like, most of the time will increase the other person's level of respect for you. And you can think about this in all kinds of ways. When a leader makes a mistake and they own it, most of us kind of say, wow, that took some courage to say that. Oops, this is a mistake I made. Sorry about that. Here's what I think we need to do. So this process of knowing what you're feeling, being able to name it for yourself, perhaps name it in an interaction. And if saying I'm afraid is too much, you might say I'm concerned. That might be a little more corporate. I've got some concerns that this isn't a good fit. Notice how empowering that is. And it's a responsible communication that will invite the person you're talking to more clarity for themselves. Okay. So I'm hoping that this is helping everybody, that you're able to picture yourself in the interview process, or if you're not currently interviewing, that you're able to picture yourself in a meeting you have coming up where, okay, I got one client right now who is presenting this afternoon, and in that presentation he has anticipated what questions people are going to be having. He's using his anxieties, his fears, instead of trying to perform and look good. He is using those fears and anxieties to anticipate what other people's concerns and what people are going to be asking him as he's presenting. And if all he did was focus on trying to look good, he would have spent a lot of his time preparing from a kind of like with blinders on approach to, okay, here's what I think the problem is, and I'm going to make sure that I present this really well and with a lot of authority and da 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 da. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's a helpful thing to get clear on. All right, here's my agenda. But I'm inviting you to a broader scope then. So, okay, great. Handle that so that you're able to communicate what you have clearly, and then use your anxiety to start anticipating what other people's concerns are. I love this one. So there's when doing a presentation, so I am a public speaker and will go into companies oftentimes during like a lunch and learn. And at these events, it's very helpful for me to think through in a grounded way. What are the people I'm talking to? What are they actually thinking about in those moments? Because I have an agenda, which is I want them to learn more about emotional intelligence. I want them to have better relationships with their coworkers and with their family members. That's pretty much my goal. And most people, but in a moment to moment kind of way, going into a lunch and learn, that's not what they're walking in with. They're not walking in with that agenda for themselves. And so it's helpful to me to anticipate what they're actually thinking about. One of the primary things most people are actually thinking about at these things is was it accurate that I get a free meal by attending this event? Stuff like that. Like, oh, who else is here? You know, oh, okay, my manager's here. Okay, I have to act this way now. Just super basic everyday stuff is where people are actually at. And I have some highfalutin goal for people around like leadership things in a few years for them and blah, blah, like whatever. Nobody cares in a kind of moment to moment way. So it's my job to anticipate that and start building rapport with those just everyday kind of interaction things. And for me to start owning that. And so one of my tricks that I'll do is I will share about my anxiety as a speaker, as somebody right there, like, you know, well, I hope you all like me today. Stuff like that. Now, if you got to do it in a way that's not, I learned not putting myself down, but being able to kind of call that stuff out in the moment, naming honestly my fears as a public speaker is scary. I come from a background as a musician. I will tell you it is way scarier speaking without a band and a wall of music in a darkly lit venue. That's easy compared to being in a brightly lit conference room Now, especially if it's like a small group, like 20 people where I can see everybody's eyes, that is way more terrifying. So, and being able to kind of like just share that right now with you, like that right there now levels the playing field. People can relate to that. And the more that you can own the anxieties that you are experiencing in just a moment to moment way with other people, often then invites them to be in more relationship with you. And so that's something that you can start practicing this like little steps with this stuff. Is picture a meeting that you have coming up with a friend, with a coworker, perhaps in another interview coming up, where you might be able to just verbalize a concern you have. It's a little risk. And then wait and see what the response is from that person. Wait and see what happens, because there'll be that moment of discomfort, like, uh-oh. And it's often a time where we think we need to fill the space. But naming a concern or making an observation and asking a question and then practicing the power of silence, inviting people to respond to what you just shared is an incredibly powerful thing. It's what I do a lot of as a coach. So, oh, thanks, Eric. Thanks for your suggestion and letting us know you had to drop. So, oh my goodness. Geez, I'm talking a lot. We're already coming up on the hour. So, for everybody who's joining in, this is Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller. I'm here every Wednesday at noon, helping people work through questions that they're having in their career, whether you are building your resume, whether you're interviewing, whether you are building up in your current company, whether you're an entrepreneur that's starting off or looking to do more expansion, whatever it is, I invite you to ask questions about whatever your concerns are. And I love this kind of shooting from the hip thing that I do here every Wednesday, and just seeing how I can tie it back to emotional intelligence, because I've found over the years that is the most important thing in career development is emotional intelligence. Because even if it's just down to learning a new skill, down to I can think back to getting my master's degree. That required so much emotional intelligence on my part, because I am not somebody who necessarily likes to sit around and write. So developing the discipline of being with my upset, my anxiety, my anger, and channeling that anger towards an outcome that I wanted, that was well, a master's degree takes 2 years. That was a 2-year long project for me. I got better and better at taking all the feelings that I have and channeling them towards an outcome that I wanted. And so emotional intelligence is incredibly useful, even for solo tasks, even if it has nothing to do with anybody else. Even if it's not about an interaction, just me working on a project, having more sense of myself and my feelings helps me be more productive even when I'm all by myself. So any questions that you have, please let me know. Welcome. For anybody who's just joining in, you are welcome to come off mute at any time and ask a question, or you can type into the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, type into the chat. I will do my best to answer your questions that way. And anybody who's joining in from LinkedIn or YouTube, feel free to type your questions into the comment section. So if this is useful stuff for you, if you're liking what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I share things about emotional intelligence. Sometimes I'll share things about career on there. This is streaming on there and is available later. And I also do hypnosis and ASMR videos on there that help get more in touch with yourself as kind of the core basic thing in leadership development, always coming back to yourself, always coming back to how you see the world. So that's available on my YouTube channel. And then if you are at a point where you're wanting to understand personality styles, understanding your personality style, understanding other personality styles, there is for free an assessment that you can take to get your personality style. And then there's a video for you to watch that will educate you a little bit on the different personality styles and how to recognize other personality styles and how to, most importantly, how to step outside of your comfort zone so that you can speak more effectively with other personality styles. So that's called Connect and Thrive. That is a fun tool. You're welcome to share it with people. If you're on, I have one client who, in working with me, she's like, "This is great. Like I'm seeing all kinds of stuff I've never seen before on my team. This is fantastic." And I started sharing this stuff with my team, and now we're using this as a common language and finding that it's way more effective. It's like, oh, you're acting like a regulator now. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, I know that I need to say in a very bottom lined way, here's what we need to do. And oh, so and so is more of a cooperator. Great. They're thinking about the social feeling of the group. They have everybody in mind, everybody's on their heart. They're going to be making decisions less based on getting results. They're thinking about people's feelings. Oh, there's the energizer who is really into what's possible. What can we do with this company? And that's more of where their headspace is at. And so it's like learning other people's languages. So have fun with that. Those are a couple useful tools there. And then if you're in the process of developing in your career, I do have a course that I include this course with anybody who's doing a coaching package with me. But if you don't want the coaching, if you just want the course that helps take you through this resume building, interviewing preparation process, that's available as well. That is accelerates your career. And that's something that everybody I work with usually uses that at some point. And if that's something you want to check out, take a look at it. Well, we are coming up on the end of the hour. I want to invite anybody to ask any questions you've got. Any questions, you can type them into the comment section, or you can come off mute and just ask. I know several people were joining in with questions about interviewing, questions about how to be more effective in your interview. So I'm going to share a quick story here in a moment. But reminder, you're welcome to type into the chat if you've got a question. You're welcome to come off mute and interrupt me. So I have a few clients right now who are in the interview process. And I'll share about one. What they're and this is a spot where they don't have the exact experience of this one of the position that they're applying for, but they have some things that transfer really well. And it's in an organization where there's definitely political battles going on inside the organization. And so there are people who it's actually perhaps to my client's benefit that they don't have that they haven't been raised, so to speak, and they don't have all this exact experience, and therefore sort of perhaps uh, blinders or a tendency to do things a certain way. It's actually useful. Well, this is what we're thinking. We're thinking that it's actually useful that they're a bit of an outsider, that them coming in to this role without having all of the relationships that will actually benefit this organization and this department, to have more of an outsider come in and be able to ask more challenging questions, be able to make observations that other people who are kind of indoctrinated into the system already wouldn't want to be saying. So they know that they're going into kind of a challenging thing, but this is part of their purpose. Remember when I was sharing first at the beginning of today about looking at challenges objectively and seeing if they help you develop as a person and help you reach your potential. A few years ago, I don't think my client would ever have thought they would be going for this role. They said, no, the whole thing's stupid and that whole department's screwed up and blah blah blah. But the way it's kind of turning out is like, wait a minute, I might actually be able to be the person who could affect change here. And yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but it's also going to help me develop. I am going to get way better as a leader by putting myself into this challenging position. And I'll be upfront in the interview process about this. And I'll be asking questions like, what kind of support am I going to get here? Because I know this is going to be a challenge. Who am I reporting to? What are the things that I can be saying? What are the guidelines and boundaries? What are the operating agreements that I'm going to have on my side? Where do I fit in the hierarchy here? This kind of thing. So when you look at your challenges from this standpoint, that's a great thing. Now, from another standpoint, though, I got a client who everybody wants them to take this one role, but they know that if they were to go into it, they would be setting themselves up for failure. They know that the necessary things there for people to be successful are not currently there. And they know their gaps in leadership. They know the ways they kind of fold on themselves. They're doing some very deep work, and they understand that they don't have the internal foundation yet required to handle the leadership challenges in this role. They can see that this is a possibility for them in the future, but they know themselves well enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to fail like that. I'm going to be upfront about it for people that I'm talking to about this. So what they did instead was they say, hey, I'm going to be on the interview panel. I'm going to be somebody that's going to is going to anticipate the ways that the person we're interviewing will fail. And they may eventually step into this position once they've done a little more personal growth work and they know that they can handle the kind of pressure it would take. But again, they're being very objective about this, looking at their gaps personally and saying, you know what, I'm not ready for that. That's totally fine. But I hope that you're getting a better picture, a better context for yourself in your career, a better context about this. So, cool. Great question coming in. So yes, you see this question, you're picturing yourself in your career. What role does body language play in an interview? How do you use it to your advantage? So Body language communicates a great deal. In fact, we make our judgments of other people in the first like half a second that we see somebody. And we are human beings are judgment machines. So when people say stuff like, "Oh, I don't like to be judgmental. I'm not a I don't I try to be objective." Like, well, it's fine. Yeah, you try to be objective, but if you don't first fess up to the fact that you're judging everybody all the time, you're going to be less objective. That's where we're at in humanity. We are recently evolved to this point, and we are. So anyway, great question. How does body language play a role in interviewing? It says a lot. So one of the things that you want to do if you're doing an interview over Zoom, you want to make sure that you're comfortable. You want to make sure that you've got yourself set up in a way that you feel good about yourself. So the fact that I have this set up the way that I do is no mistake. Like, I have myself set up. I'm in a place where I am comfortable. I have a chair that is very comfortable. And sometimes when I'm doing these, I'm even standing up, kind of depending on the space that I want to be in. So having yourself comfortable in your interview, knowing that you're sounding good, is the first, just most basic thing you want to do. Having a blank background is fine. If you're in a spot where you don't want to show off your background, that's totally fine. Just use the Zoom thing, and have a fake background. Have good lighting on yourself, and make sure that your Zoom microphone is set up so that it sounds good. Sometimes people have different microphones, etc., and it's not interacting great with Zoom. So do a test of it. Just ask somebody to give you feedback. Set yourself up and do a quick mock interview with a friend, family member, colleague, whoever. Just some of these most basic things. That's going to give you more confidence knowing that other people have said, good, sounds good. Okay. Then another thing that you can do is allow yourself time to breathe. And notice there, I just took a moment. That's a fine thing to do in an interview. Allow yourself some space. So you might start practicing in other conversations that you're having. You might start practicing giving yourself a moment before you respond. This is something that in an interview, what this will do is, if you can be comfortable allowing some silence, it shows that you're comfortable with yourself. It's a very subtle thing, but learning to take a moment, learning that you might say, if you're being interviewed and they ask a question and you don't have a great answer right away, allowing yourself to say, give me a moment. I have a couple of examples that are starting to pop up as with that. Are you looking for more something like this or something like that? So allowing yourself that space is another useful thing to do. What else do we got? Well, let me know if that's helpful so far, or if there's any other questions about interviewing and body language that you could be thinking of. So if you're thinking about personality styles, one thing you might do is smile a little bit. Just a little warmth on the face can go a long way. And it's not like, hi, I'm so happy to do that. Like, I'm not like that. But you might practice letting yourself smile a bit. The research on this is kind of weird and bizarre. If you want to go deep on it, Siam Belloch's work in how the body knows its mind is profound. So here's this thing. Our body influences our internal state. Our internal state influences how other people perceive us. No, you're not going to put a pen in your mouth during an interview. But studies show that doing this, literally putting a pen in your mouth, do it off camera. Try it out right now. For those of you who are listening in, grab a pen or a pencil, put it in your mouth, and notice, I forget how long you have to leave it there. You leave it there for a little bit. It actually starts tricking the mind into being happier. So body posture is so much. So you could literally put a freaking pencil in your mouth before an interview and it will shift that. Oh, and CM Belloch tells a great story, which is before an interview, it actually is better for you to go outside and go for a walk or a run or move your body around some. You're going to get more value from doing that than cramming in the last, morning or right before the interview on like preparing that kind of thing. Of course, you have to prepare, but you also want to give yourself space to get into your body because that will translate. That actually, she calls the body the throne for the mind. And if your throne's all screwed up, your mind doesn't work as well. You could look this stuff up online. If you do the power pose, like Superwoman or this, that actually makes you feel more powerful. So you can do that before an interview. The stuff that I do before going on stage, before speaking presentations, or what I would do before performing, um, I had my rituals that would get me in the mindset. Okay, good. I'm glad this is helping. So I'm glad you asked that because, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you can do preparing mentally, but the body language stuff makes a huge difference. I'm so glad you asked that question. Thank you. So that's part of how this works. I got to sign off. I'm realizing that I have gone right up until 1 and I've got a session coming in. So thanks for joining in. Really appreciate your engagement, your questions. Your questions serve everybody who's viewing in. And join me next week, Career Lab Wednesday. If you want to look at the recordings, check it out on YouTube. And you've also got access to the personality video and assessment there. All right. Take care, everybody. I'll see you next